Teen shows are everywhere. They're full of drama, romance, and messy coming-of-age stories, but very few protagonists actually feel real. I feel like one of the bigger issues with a lot of recent or modern teen shows, or even teen films, is the main protagonists, which usually are female protagonists. Some of them feel too messy, too unlikable, or even some of them come off as completely boring, and most of their stories revolve around romance. But there is actually one protagonist who I feel like is completely underrated and even in my opinion underappreciated. That is Devi Visha Kumar from Never Have I Ever. She stands out because she's not perfect, she's flawed, impulsive, and sometimes hard to like, and that's exactly why she works. In my opinion, she's one of the best teen protagonists on TV, and here's why. Today, we're going to be discussing Devi's growth and character arc throughout the entire show, why she works, why other protagonists may not work, and also we're going to be discussing other elements of her character and the show as a whole, and why it makes Devi a much better protagonist for it. So, Devi from Never Have I Ever is a young 16-year-old girl who, after going through a recent trauma of her dad dying from a heart attack and becoming paralyzed from the waist down, she wants to start her new school life in high school, being popular, finding a boyfriend, and getting into a good social life. But what makes Devi work so well as a protagonist is that she does have a lot of trauma, like she does have a lot of an understandable reason to be extremely self-centered, extremely violent, extremely aggressive, but the show never once uses it as an excuse. This is a problem with a lot of other main teen protagonists where instead of them actually facing actual consequences, they instead constantly use their own trauma or their own problems as an excuse, and also the narrative does that as well. Devi, on the other hand, while she does try to use her father's death as an excuse at times, she's never actually allowed to do so. The scene that proves this the most is in season 1, episode 7, where after she ends up ditching her friends to go hang out with the popular guy Paxton, her friends end up wanting a breakup from her just so that she could learn to appreciate them more. This is during the time where her best friend Eleanor has been abandoned by her mom a second time after finding out that she lied to her. But after Devi accidentally humiliates Fabiola in public at a party, she basically yells at Devi and pretty much has a lash out calling her out for being self-centered. And here's where Devi tries to use her dad's death as an excuse, but instead Fabiola is against it. She's not having any of it and calls Devi out, saying that just because her father died doesn't mean she has a free pass of treating everyone else like crap.
So sorry, it's such an inconvenience for you that my dad died.
Yeah, I know he did. But that doesn't give you a free pass to treat us like crap.
Another thing that makes the show work so well is that we actually get a lot of screen time dedicated to Devi's friends, Fabiola and Eleanor. The two of them are more than just the best friends of the main character. They both have their own struggles and self-journeys to go through. Eleanor with her drama life and her relationship with her mother, and Fabiola and her sexuality arc where she starts to realize that she might in fact be gay and is afraid of telling her parents and brother about that. This allows us to feel more relatable towards Devi's friends and doesn't make them out to just be the best friends of the main character. So when Fabiola calls Devi out on this, we actually feel for both Fabiola and Devi, but the show isn't using Devi's dad's death as an excuse for her behavior. I feel like this is a big problem with the protagonist of Ginny and Georgia, Ginny herself. See, Ginny does a lot of not so great things throughout the show. She does a lot of unlikable things such as how she treats her mom, how she yells at her, how she doesn't appreciate her, and how she even treats her own friends in seasons 1 through 3. But I feel like one of the worst things that Ginny does that isn't properly acknowledged as well is in season 3 with how she treats her best friend Max. See, in season 2, after Max finds out that Ginny was cheating on her boyfriend Hunter with Marcus, her twin brother, she does do not so great things. She ends up completely ghosting Ginny. And whilst the show does acknowledge that to be wrong, and Maxine does actually develop from that, in season 3, Ginny, Abby, and Nora all completely ghost Maxine. They end up socially excluding her from their hangouts. They end up trauma bonding without her. And Ginny doesn't seem to really care or mind that she's doing so to Maxine. Despite the fact that Maxine was the one who welcomed her into the friend group in the first place, meanwhile Noah and Abby did not really want Ginny to be a part of their friend group. Max was always by Ginny's side. She was always the one person who was there for her. Even in season 3, when she was trying to ghost her, she was trying to help her out after her mom went to prison, and even then, Ginny was still being awful towards Maxine. But the show never really allows her to take accountability for that, because they try to act like that since Ginny has her own problems to deal with, that she has her own family problems to deal with, which is true. Ginny does have a lot of baggage to go through, but I feel like what makes her like unlikable to a lot of audiences is that the story never actually has her to hold accountability for that. They instead just keep using her pain and her past as an excuse for it. This is the main difference between Ginny and Devi, because Devi, despite going through a lot of trauma herself, like she just lost her father, like through something really traumatic, like he just immediately died from a heart attack during her performance, and then right after she immediately got paralyzed, like that is actually a really traumatic thing for a teenager to go through. Yet even then, the story doesn't use that as an excuse for Devi's behavior. In season 1, she ditches her friends to go and hang out with Paxton, the guy who she has a crush on, just so she can help him out. Even though Eleanor was going through something traumatic at the time, she lied about sleeping with Paxton, and even then, she doesn't face like Paxton chooses not to tell the school about it. Devi doesn't do great things in the fourth season, but the show never once uses her father's death as an excuse for it, in contrast to Ginny. And I feel like this is what makes Devi such a more likable character, because the story treats her like an actual person, and it does feel a lot more realistic to have people call her out for her behavior, instead of her just simply just like having a free pass because she's the main character.
Hey, I'm really sorry. I'm kind of drunk.
This also provides a really good message towards a younger audience, and it shows to young teenagers that just because you're going through your own problems doesn't mean you can take it out on the people around you, and that doesn't mean you still cannot take accountability for your own actions just because you're going through your own problems. And I feel actors in teen shows, most of their character arcs are usually defined by them trying to date a guy, or like their entire love life being centered around like their character arc. But Devi actually has more of an arc to the story than her just simply trying to date a guy. Yes, she has a crush on Paxton in season 1. Yes, she ends up two-timing Paxton and Ben in season 2. But there's actually more towards her like story than just dating guys. Devi's entire arc in the show, it's actually more about her trying to earn external validation. See, her father, before he died, he was the number one source of love and self-worth that Devi had. And this stems from her complicated relationship with her mother. And to be fair, the whole debate of whether or not her mom's a bad mom or not, I feel like that one thing we have to acknowledge is that she was trying to be a good mom towards Devi. This is because Nalini, is that her name? Yes. She was going through grief herself. She just lost her husband through something traumatic as well. And I do appreciate the show bringing that up. Like, she also is going through her own trauma. She's struggling into raising Devi on her own now as a single mother. And I feel like deep down she knew just how close Devi was with her father. And the reason why Devi has this complicated relationship with her mom is because her mom doesn't really give her that much external validation. She's strict, she's stern, and she's someone who truly doesn't give out much appreciation physically or externally. Her father, in contrast, he was always the one person who always showed Devi how much he loved her, how much he believed in her. He was able to relate to her towards all of her skills and hobbies and interests. This is what made Devi feel special. It's what made her feel like she was enough for someone. So after she lost her father, and after going through a humiliating year by being in a wheelchair, Devi feels like she needs to regain that self-worth. And she does that by trying to gain external validation. This is why Devi is extremely obsessed with trying to date someone like Paxton, because Paxton is this really popular and hot guy, so if she dates him, then she assumes that she'll finally feel enough. She also desperately wants to be like a part of a bigger social life, because if she gets a lot of friends, if she gets a lot of love from other people, then she'll feel like she's enough. But the problem here with Devi is that she's trying to use external validation to fill an internal hole, the hole that was left in her heart by her father. But Devi isn't actually learning to fill that hole internally. This is why they gave her a therapist throughout the entire show, and I actually do like how the therapist is able to be more like the voice of reason for Devi and her crazy behavior at times. But what makes this great is that the story uses her romantic subplot to align with her character arc instead of having to dominate it, or having it just being there. Devi's behavior does actually align. One thing I always appreciate about Never Have I Ever is how well it's able to handle its male characters and its male love interest for Devi. It's pretty usual in most teen shows for the second that a male love interest doesn't work for its main female protagonist, they usually just get written out of the story, like almost immediately. Cam from The Summer I Turned Pretty, Hunter from Ginny and Georgia, Wolf from Ginny and Georgia, even John Ambrose from the To All the Boys series. It's pretty common for the second that a love interest doesn't work for its protagonist, they usually just get written out of the story, and they don't really have much to offer other than just being a potential love interest for the main character. Thankfully, Never Have I Ever doesn't do that. Instead, its two main love interests, Paxton and Ben, despite not being main characters in the show, they actually have really interesting character arcs of their own that really help make their relationships with Devi a lot more interesting. Paxton, who I feel like is the most interesting one of the most interesting characters in the show, he goes through a whole arc where he goes from a dumb jock to a more smarter and more well-assured guy. He starts off only being the popular guy, and once he does end up liking Devi, the second he finds out that she was two-timing him, he gets in an accident. And afterwards, he gets injured and he's unable to get into a good scholarship because he's physically injured. Because of this, he basically guilt trips Devi into doing his homework for him so that he can get into college another way. But rightfully, his younger sister Rebecca calls him out for being dishonest, and basically using Devi for his own self-gain. But then, when Paxton starts to realize that he actually does want to go to college, he actually doesn't want to just be a high school dropout and just do nothing. He actually wants to study hard on his own to get into college. And almost everybody they don't believe in him. Like his peers don't believe in him, his teachers don't, his friends don't, not even his parents don't really feel like he has what it takes. And this again leads to Paxton into realizing that the only voice that matters is his own. He just has to rely on his own voice. He needs to tell himself that he can do it, that he can believe in himself. And that's what allows Paxton to realize that he can do well. And he eventually does do well with his studies. And afterwards, he and Devi start dating, but he's afraid of dating her in public because of what happened before. But then her friends rightfully point that out, and Paxton does choose to date Devi in public again. And in season 3, he actually starts to become a better person. When Devi tells Paxton that he should apologize to the girl that he wronged in the past, Paxton does apologize, and he ends up apologizing to so many more girls that he has wronged in the past. Paxton actually has so much character development in the entire show. He goes from point A to B with a lot of character developments, despite him just being a love interest at the start. And that's why I love about Never Have I Ever, because the show actually takes advantage of its male characters and makes them into actually compelling characters. Ben is also a good character, even though he's not as interesting as Paxton in my opinion. He's still a pretty interesting and well-rounded character. He basically is a bit of a know-it-all. He basically was a rival to his baby for most of the show because of how smart he was.
What?
And because of this, he basically has a problem with after Devi ends up two-timing both Paxton and Ben, as she isn't really sure who she wants to date, so she ends up dating both of them in a way. They both find out about it eventually, and what I love is how they don't actually fight over her. They both rightfully get upset at her. They know that she was the one who hurt them. And then afterwards, Paxton gets into an accident again. And even though he ends up guilt-tripping Devi into helping him, Devi does actually feel genuinely bad for what she did. And she does try to fix her mistake by helping him with his homework. This is what I actually love about Devi as a character. She's a character who not only faces consequences for her actions, but she's also a character who tries to fix her mistakes, which is where Anissa comes in. Now, Anissa is a new Indian girl who comes into her school, Initially, she's a bit resentful towards her, but over time, she actually ends up really liking Anissa as a friend, and that she actually ends up appreciating her until she starts getting close to Ben. Now, Davy is still not technically over Ben or Paxton after what happened, so she ends up trying to stop Ben and Anissa from being alone together. When that fails, out of rage, she accidentally tells the other popular gears about Anissa having an eating disorder. And while she assumed that was a rumor, Anissa later tells her that it's actually true, that she actually had an eating disorder, and everyone found out about that in her old school, which is why she moved schools in the first place. Now, this is what makes Davy's character arc pretty interesting here, as she doesn't tell the truth. She chooses to let other popular gears take the blame for what happened, and while she does feel bad about it, she's afraid of telling Anissa the truth. But as Anissa keeps getting closer to Davy, when she starts to appreciate Davy's help a lot more, Davy does come clean out of guilt. Now, this is something I actually really love about Davy's character, because even though she does come clean, even though she admits to it, Anissa still walks out, and so does her friends. Her friends follow. And afterwards, the principal expels her. She suspends her from school after finding out. And I just love how the principal is actually doing something in the show. She's actually punishing Davy for spreading a rumor and letting 2 other gears take the fall. But yes, Davy does get suspended. Her mom doesn't help, knowing that she has to face this consequence. And Anissa refuses to help Davy as well. But after Davy realizes just how badly she's hurt Anissa, she does try to make things right. She cosplays as a guy to try and help Anissa out with her eating disorder. She tries to ask her mom for help to make sure Anissa stays in school instead of moving away again. Davy does try to not only face consequences, but she also tries to fix her mistakes instead of just letting the mistakes continue on. She tries to help people afterwards, which is why she's such a great protagonist. And why Isabel Conklin from the Summer I Turned Pretty is not.
You should apologize. You screwed up and now everything...
Now, the main problem with Belly from the Summer I Turned Pretty for me is that the show at times calls her out for her behavior. After all, she was in a way like getting in the relationship between 2 brothers. She was constantly dating Conrad and Jeremiah. Like, she was making out with Jeremiah in season 1, and in season 2 she was dating Conrad. And then after breaking up with her, a month after she broke up with him, she started dating Jeremiah, like the younger brother. And this was during the time where they just lost their mom. Like, their mom straight up died, and even then she was still messing around with both of their feelings. Like, I get that she was also close with their mom as well, but like, they just lost their mom. Why are you out here trying to make out with both of them and getting in the way between both of them when they just lost their mom? They're both grieving for their mom right now, and you're out here just like messing up their feelings. But, okay, to give the story credit, Steven does call her out for her behavior, calling her selfish. And whilst Belly does later on admit that she does feel bad for what she did, she doesn't actually do anything to fix it. Belly does admit that, look, yes, I did get in the way between Jeremiah and Conrad. I hurt them so badly. She does do that, but she doesn't actually fix the problem. She just lets it continue, and she doesn't face any proper consequences for it. Conrad nor Jeremiah get mad at her for behavior. They just like let it continue. Conrad just moves away to Stanford. Jeremiah just chooses to date her regardless of how his brother feels, despite him knowing that Conrad still has somewhat feelings for Belly. And I feel like another example of this is definitely when it comes to Laurel, her mom, because in season 2, Laurel does try to get Belly to take accountability for her actions, for her bad behavior, but then she keeps using Susanna's death as an excuse for how she acts. And when Lola does call her out for it, she does admit that, like, look, yeah, like, I do feel bad, I hate myself for what I did at the funeral. But Belly doesn't change afterwards. In season 3, she still uses Susanna as an excuse for every single thing that she does. She uses her as an excuse for marrying Jeremiah.
Listen to him. He's right. I mean, I ruined things with both of them, and then Susanna died, and I completely ruined her funeral, and I...
I I feel like Bailey's main problem is that the show, despite knowing what she's doing is wrong, they never let her face consequences, let alone do they ever let her like fix them. She gets upset, she feels bad, but that's it. Like in season 3 when the wedding fails, she just leaves for Paris and no one blames her for it. Like no one. The only person who blames her is Jeremiah, and he only blames her for basically canceling the wedding. Nobody blames her. Instead, all of the blame goes towards Conrad, not her. I feel like this is a problem because Belly never faces proper consequences for her actions. Like, the story she just finds a loophole out of facing any proper accountability. And not only that, she barely changes. She barely tries to make the situation better. This is what makes Devi such a better protagonist because she actually faces consequences for her behavior. And more importantly, she tries to fix her mistakes. I feel like this is also another problem with Kitty from Exo Kitty, where Kitty, to be fair, she's not a bad protagonist by any means, but I feel like Kitty's main problem is that she's kind of incapable of actually developing into a better person, into a better character, and that's because she doesn't get to face consequences. And the reason why she's unable to face consequences is that Kitty is almost always in the right. Every single time she comes up with a crazy idea or a speculation, she's always right for that. In season 1, she's right about fake dating. In season 2, she's right about Stella being no good. And season 3 does offer a pretty good opportunity of her actually facing a consequence. I feel like the biggest example of this is, again, in season 3, where she tries to set up her cousin Jiwon with her teacher Alex on a blind date. But after Alex leaves, her cousin rightfully calls her out for trying to set her up on a blind date without thinking about the consequences that would come from it. And more importantly, she calls Kitty out for not actually doing this for her, she's doing this for herself so that she can spend more time with her boyfriend Minho. So Jiwon ends up giving Devi a consequence by giving her more homework and a harder assignment for her subject. But then afterwards, she already passes it so easily anyways. And we find out later on in the show that Jiwon and the teacher Alex were having an affair in the past. Meaning that Kitty was right. She was right that those two were good for each other. She was right that she was right for like setting them up. So even though Kitty could have had a great opportunity where she realizes that she shouldn't butt into other people's business, because that is a big flaw that Kitty has throughout the entire show. She wants to be this big matchmaker, but she also needs to realize that you cannot always butt yourself into other people's business. But the problem is that Kitty always does that, and she never changes because the show again can never let her face consequences because again she's always right. This is what makes Devi, in my opinion, stand out so much because she does face consequences for how badly she acts, and she actually does try to fix those mistakes, which is what leads to her incredible character development going forward in the show.
Everything. I can't believe I said I wish you were dead. I didn't mean it.
No.
Now, Devi's character development in the show is probably one of my favorite things about her as a character because Devi grows in so many different ways. Again, she's such a layered character. We get to see her struggle with her insecurities. When she does start dating Paxton again in season 3, she immediately gets insecure about the fact that Paxton may be better off with another popular girl over her after he becomes friends with her. Even though Devi was the one who got him to apologize to her, Paxton does call her out for it, and they do have an honest conversation later on when Devi goes crazy over the fact that Paxton chose to shoot her in a game where she wasn't even on his team. And they do have this is actually one of my favorite scenes in the entire show, where Paxton does have an honest conversation with Devi here. And Devi does and this is where I feel like Paxton's character development is shown the most here. Paxton, he's not upset or annoyed or even heartbroken by the fact that Devi doesn't trust him. He instead is aware that Devi, she's not doubting him, she's doubting herself. She's constantly talking about how she isn't good enough for him, how she doesn't understand why he would like her, and Paxton realizes that Devi doesn't have enough self-worth for her to be in a relationship with him. So Paxton ends up ending the relationship so that she can focus more on herself. This breakup actually was so sad. It's so sad to see Devi get broken up by him because I feel like they were the best pair. But I feel like the show does do a good job at showing us how much they've grown as people afterwards. Devi ends up trying to move on. They end up finding other people who they're better off with. it's actually a really great character development for Devi, for her to focus more on herself, because afterwards she does try to like move on. She does try to like focus more on herself and her own problems. She focuses more on therapy. She focuses more on getting into the university of her dreams. And she also tries not to focus all too much on dating anymore after her situationship with her family friend. So Devi does go through a lot of growth throughout the show. Like, you know, with her love life. She starts off only wanting to date Paxton because he's popular, but then she ends up actually liking him. And then they actually end up dating in the end of season 2. But then she lets her insecurities get in the way of her relationship with Paxton, which is what causes him to break up with her. And I love how like they were still able to become friends afterwards. The story was able to take good advantage of giving Paxton and Devi growth by having them still be friends afterwards. I cannot really say the same for Ginny and Marcus from Ginny and Georgia, or I can't really say the same for Belly and Jeremiah from the Semi-Turned Pretty either. Because I feel like that with Marcus from Ginny and Georgia, I don't think he's really that much of a great character. I understand he's a character suffering from depression, but with 3 seasons in, and he hasn't really developed at all. He breaks up with Ginny in the end of season 2 because he's going through his own depression, and then in season 3 he gets even worse, and when his sister Max, who in my opinion is one of the only characters who has had any development up to this point in the show, tries to take care of him, and he's constantly just pushing her away. And we only have 1 more season left of the show, so I'm not going to judge anything too soon, but we only have 1 more season left, so how exactly going to like make the entire arc of Marcus go full circle? I mean, please tell me what you guys thought about that down below. Another thing that Devi goes through as well is her cultural identity arc. At the start of the show, Devi doesn't really seem to have much of a sense of self when it comes to her being Indian. But as the show continues, she actually starts to become more accepting, and she actually wants to engage more with her outfits, with her dances, with her culture. We see this later on in the show with the final season, where she does actually become more culturally, like, you know, shown. And I feel like that another thing is also her outfits as well. She starts off wearing very westernized clothing. She's shown wearing short skirts and like short and jeans, but later on in like the last 2 seasons she starts to wear more cultural outfits in those last 2 seasons. And I also love this one dress she had on. Like, it's also like really pretty. I honestly love that. And seeing her become more engaged with her culture in the last 2 seasons is actually really great. It's a great message to give to young teenagers that you should never be ashamed of where you come from. And seeing that growth that David goes through is something I do love. I feel like that despite Belly being half Asian, we don't really get to see much of that cultural identity in Belly in the show that much. Which is a shame, because the To All the Boys series does do a pretty good job at showing Lodging and Kitty's Korean heritage, and even EXO Kitty in a way does this pretty well too. I mean, she's in Korea, but Belly, we don't get to see much of her, like, you know, cultural identity as a Asian female character. But when it comes to Devi though, we actually get to see a cultural arc with her. She becomes more engaged with her culture as the show continues. And that's what I really love about Devi. She actually ends up like showing more of her culture instead of her just like doing nothing with it the entire show. Especially since the show didn't need to do that. So I'm actually really appreciative towards that, especially as a woman of color myself. So I actually really appreciate what the show did with Devi's arc with her culture. And I feel like another thing I also love about Devi's arc is her relationship with her mother. Because throughout the show, Devi does again have a very complicated relationship with her mom. She starts off like struggling a lot with her relationship with her, like trying to like distance herself from her because of what happened with her dad. She even ends up having a big argument with her when her mom tells her that they're moving to India. And Devi instead gets mad at her mom and says that she should have been the one who died instead of her father, which is a horrible thing to say to your mom no matter what. But thankfully afterwards, Devi does take accountability for that. She apologizes to her mom, admits that she's been a terrible daughter towards her. And even though I wish her mom also apologized for what she said before her dad died, I still appreciate how her mom admits that like she also really wished that like she would have been the one to have gone as well, and that Devi is her only daughter. And I love how after this specific scene, they end up actually becoming a lot closer with one another. In season 3 and 4, when Devi goes through a heartbreak with Paxton, her mom is there to comfort her. After Devi tries to run away to go to a party, her mom lets her go, but under certain conditions. She's still stern and strict, but she also allows Devi to, you know, be more free, be more accepting. She's also able to be more emotionally available for her daughter. They both grow a lot as characters, and that's what I really love about Devi and her relationship with her mom. I feel like the main issue I had with Belly's relationship with Laurel in the show is that we see Belly saying and doing awful things to her mom. Like in season 3, she has this big argument with her about marrying Jeremiah, and even though they have a really sweet scene where she comes to the bridal shower, Belly doesn't apologize for how she treated Laurel. Like, she doesn't apologize for screaming at her or, like, ghosting her after she said no to the wedding. Especially since Laurel wasn't wrong for not wanting to support the marriage. She wasn't against them getting married. She was against them getting married right now. She was against them, like, doing it when they were still in college, when Belly is still going to Paris. And instead of being polite and showing respect to her mom, she just yells at her and just leaves the house. Like, and Belly never apologizes for that. She never even apologizes to Laurel in season 2 for how she acted. And it just makes Belly a less likable character because the story doesn't develop her relationship with anyone else besides Carmen and Jeremiah. Throughout the entire show, her relationship with other characters barely really develops. Like, even her friendship with Taylor barely has any sense of development in the show either. This is what makes Devi a much better protagonist because she actually has so much development with not just her mom but with other characters as well. She starts off being very self-centered towards her friends, but later on in the show she ends up actually being a better friend towards them. In season 3, she actually ends up being more concerned for Fabiola and Eleanor when they're going through their own problems. She even ends up being a better friend to Anissa after she stays in school. Devi becomes a much more more respectful. She becomes more culturally identified, and she becomes a better friend and a better person to the people around her. Even when her mom starts dating a new guy or tries to start dating a new guy in the final season, instead of being upset and going crazy like what we saw her do in season 3, here though, she actually does try to help her mom. She even tells her therapist that she actually wants to help her mom trying to date this other guy, and even tries to get his daughter involved. Devi goes through a lot of character development throughout the show, and I feel like this is what I love about her as a main character. This is what I love about Devi as a main character. She actually goes through a lot of significant character growth. And it's not even just in her love life or her internal growth. She goes through a lot of character development with other characters. She grows a lot as a character, and I feel like this character growth is what makes Devi stand out so much as a main character in a teen show. Because usually they don't develop that much, and even if they do, it's kind of like very subtle, like it's very like limited, but that's not what they do with Devi. What makes Devi a really great protagonist for me is that she grows in so many areas, and they don't just use her love life, they use it to align with her character arc. They use Devi's character arc to make her growth a lot better. While I'm not a big fan of her ending up with Ben by the end of the show, I love what it does for her character because it shows that Devi has finally learned to love and accept herself. And that's what makes Devi such an incredible protagonist. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and good night!